One thing we've been talking here a lot about is the media coverage of Russia's war in Ukraine and how they have not laid out any of the downsides of our strategy whatsoever and how important it is to ultimately push for peace. One of the voices who have been sounding the alarm is Branko Marcetic. He joins us now. He's a writer for Jacobin and also author of the book Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. Great to see you, Branko.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to see you, sir.
I wanted to put this polling up on the screen first. We've mentioned this a few times in the show, but I think it's important to break it down. This is from the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. They're one of the only outlets that's been interested in how the American public feels about diplomacy. And you have nearly half of voters who say the U.S. should be doing more diplomatically to help end the war in Ukraine. And yet this view is not heard anywhere practically in the media. What did you make of these polling results?
I mean, to me, it illustrated the really stark divide between the discourse in the mainstream press, not just the mainstream press, really all media, and the discourse, particularly on social media, compared to what is that ordinary American people actually believe, that the majority of the U.S. public believes. And this is not just the United States. I mean, there was a poll in Germany that showed most Germans, who are really feeling pretty harshly the economic blowback of the sanctions. They want more diplomacy to try and end the war. This is also the prevailing opinion in most of the rest of the world, in the global South. There was this Reuters report not too long ago that quoted an African diplomat who said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said this idea that we're hearing from the West, that the war must simply just go on and on and on, and there shouldn't be any diplomatic engagement to end it, is completely bizarre to us. We don't understand it at all. You can look at some of the other countries, countries like Turkey or say Mexico, who have attempted to try and broker some sort of peace agreement. Turkey apparently successfully had brokered an agreement in March until a culmination of the Bucha massacre and Boris Johnson's surprise trip to Kiev scuttled that. You've also got Mexico, AMLO, the Mexican president, who's a left-wing president. He put forward his own peace deal to the UN not too long ago. It was unsuccessful, but still it shows that there is a largely a push in much of the world to end this, because we have to remember, obviously, the people who are feeling the effects and the horror of this war, Putin's invasion, first and foremost, are Ukrainians, of course. But it's not just Ukrainians that are suffering. The economic blowback of the war, of the sanctions being felt around the world really, really brutally. There's food shortages, there's political instability, and we're seeing some of that creeping into Western Europe as well. Well, not just Western Europe, all of Europe. There is a tremendous amount of fear for what's going to happen during the winter that's coming. Seems to be especially brutal. You've seen protests. There was a protest a month or two ago in Prague. I think about 70,000 people were protesting, calling for the end of sanctions. There was recently protests in Moldova. Right. Hungary has come under pretty intense political strain because of this as well. There's been a lot of unhappiness by the general population because of the effect of the sanctions. So there's a lot going on here that I think we have to think about. We have to think about this in a much broader way than just, in terms of kind of pushing for a war that may be years long or even never ending.
That, something I wonder about is when I was a kid, we invaded Iraq and there were thousands of people in the streets kind of protesting against it. Right now, we're probably closer to a nuclear strike. I'm not saying it's very likely, but closer than any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't really see any domestic strife about that at all. Why do you think it is? Is that a media thing? Like people don't understand it? Or people just think it's too abstract? Like, where are we in that process?
I don't know. I think it's a combination of things. I have found myself over this weekend in an incredibly surreal position where, I always thought growing up that if the world ever came close to nuclear war as it did in the early 60s, that the hardest thing would be to pressure those in power to step back, to de-escalate, to try and find some way out of the crisis that brought us back from the brink and didn't lead to nuclear annihilation. I'm finding that the most difficult thing at the moment is trying to convince people, people who are politically engaged, who are politically active, who are educated, who are intelligent people, trying to convince them to care about this issue and to understand the danger that we are in right now, number one. And then number two, to actually oppose it, to say that, yes, the Russian invasion is horrific and illegal and reckless and stupid and morally wrong and so many other things. Yes, absolutely, Ukraine deserves to take back the territory that was seized from it. But are we really willing to make that a more important cause than stopping the annihilation of vast swaths of the human race in a nuclear war? Because you have to remember, if nuclear war starts, things can very quickly escalate, but beyond just the countries that are involved, number one. If it's US and Russia, that's going to suddenly involve the NATO states. Missiles are going to be flying all over the place. We're talking Canada, we're talking Western Europe, Eastern Europe. And I have to remind people as well that when we're talking about nuclear war, the country that's going to get hit first is Ukraine itself. Mm-hmm. What is the use of any military victory and even any land reclamation it gets back if the country is wiped off the map? What does it matter anymore? These things are not being discussed at all, and I'm surprised, honestly, at some of the pushback I've gotten to this. I always thought that trying to avoid nuclear war was the most uncontroversial possible thing one could talk about. And yet I'm finding suddenly in this political climate that we're stuck in at the moment that it is apparently not considered such a simple thing anymore.
Yeah.
What would a different approach ultimately look like?
I mean, from the beginning of this, I was always advocating for the United States to negotiate with Russia over its demands of a NATO, which it's not the only cause of the war, but that is a big part of what started this the Russian long-simming resentment over NATO expansion and various kind of slights and affronts that the Russian leadership saw from the United States. I think that diplomacy on that subject early on could have stopped it. I think that diplomatic engagement throughout from the West, not just by Russia and Ukraine, because you have to remember, I mean, the U.S. is a huge party to this conflict. I mean, the U.S. is not just sending unprecedented amounts of military aid to Ukraine, but it's also been involved in war planning with the Ukrainian government. It's been involved in giving them intelligence and other support that has allowed them to sink, the Russian flagship in the Black Sea. It's allowed them to kill Russian generals. So the U.S. is heavily involved in this. And again, a lot of this war is, as we saw in the lead up, it's a lot of it's to do with Putin's resentment towards the West, and the U.S. in particular. And so the U.S. need to step in, I think, and not just say, oh, well, this is a cause for the Ukrainians. We have nothing to do with this. I think the U.S. really has to come in and engage with this. And I wish, at the moment, I'm surprised at the lack of movement around the world. It's not just that the U.S. is not really, or doesn't seem to want to engage beyond just sort of threats as an attempt of deterrence. But, what about China? What about the many countries that would be affected by any nuclear exchange? Why is there not a mass call for some sort of de-escalation? Where is the peace movement? There used to be a robust peace movement through the Cold War to demonstrate the public unwillingness to go to the places that we are in right now. All of that seems to be gone. I wish that people, were more active and more outspoken about this to demonstrate that no, nuclear war is not worth anything.
I think that is all extraordinarily well said. And there's literally no issue that is more important than the fact that it has been, the position you're advocating, which is like the mainstream position in American society, the fact that is totally absent from the media conversation, the fact that there was never any discussion or debate about the potential downsides of the strategy that the U.S. was employing. This may turn out to be one of the most devastating mistakes in the history of the country. I hope not in the history of mankind.
Find out.
Branko, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We've got the Chicago show. The tickets are on sale, folks. Go ahead and buy them as we're really excited. We're going to be there in 11 days. 11 days.
God.
Feels right around the corner. I feel like
right
Atlanta was yesterday. Apparently it was like 2.5 weeks ago.
It's going to be super fun. Very excited
It's
about
going to be a
that.
hell of a lot of fun. Buy your tickets. The link is in the description. Also, we've got the Counterpoints show debuting tomorrow because of an off-week schedule or off-day schedule this week. So I'm really looking forward to see what they do with the show. It's a lot of fun to celebrate their launch and also the hiring of our new person. Continue our expansion. We've got the discount going on right now, 10% off. Link also in the description for that. You guys know the drill. You'll see Ryan and Emily tomorrow. You'll see us on Thursday. We got content, partners, so much more enabled by all of you. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next time.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.